Hello, I hope you guys are in the good condition. Okay, in this discussion our group will discuss Old English literature or what is commonly called Anglo-Saxon.
Here are some of the discussions. 1. Introduction to Old English literature. 2. Characteristics of Anglo-Saxon. 3. Differences between Anglo-Saxon and Anglo-Norman. 4. Old English poem Beowulf. 5. Most popular poet in Old English period. 6. Two types of Old English poetry.
Introduction to Old English literature. Old English began, in written form, as a practical necessity in the aftermath of the Danish invasions. Church officials were concerned that because of the drop in Latin literacy, no one could read their work. Anglo-Saxon or Old English literature has gone through different periods of research. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, the focus was on the Germanic roots of English. Later, the literary merits were examined, and today the interest is with paleography questions and the physical manuscripts themselves, such as dating, place of origin, authorship, and looking at the connections between Anglo-Saxon culture and the rest of Europe in the Middle Ages. The second is characteristics Anglo-Saxon. 1. Heroic poetry Eilman. 2. Christianity ideals. 3. Synecdoche. 4. Metonymy. And the last is irony. The third is difference between Anglo-Saxon and Anglo-Norman. Anglo-Saxon refers to the language and culture that developed in England among the descendants of Germanic invaders after the withdrawal of Rome, while Anglo-Norman refers to the language and culture that developed among the descendants of Normans and allied invaders living in England after the Norman conquest. The fourth is Beowulf poem. Beowulf is an Old English epic poem in the tradition of Germanic heroic legend consisting of 3,182 alliterative lines. It is one of the most important and most often translated works of Old English literature. The date of composition is a matter of contention among scholars. The only certain dating is for the manuscript, which was produced between 975 and 1025. Scholars call the anonymous author the Beowulf poet. The story is set in pagan Scandinavia in the 6th century. Beowulf, a hero of the Geats, comes to the aid of Hrothgar, the king of the Danes, whose mead hall in Heorot has been under attack by the monster Grendel. After Beowulf slays him, Grendel's mother attacks the hall and is then defeated. Victorious, Beowulf goes home to Geatland and becomes king of the Geats. 50 years later, Beowulf defeats a dragon, but is mortally wounded in the battle. After his death, his attendants cremate his body and erect a tower on a headland in his memory. 5. Most popular poet. Sædman. Sædman is considered the first Old English poet whose work still survives. He is a legendary figure, as described in Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English People. According to Bede, Sædman was first an illiterate herdsman. Following a vision of a messenger from God, Sædman received the gift of poetry, and then lived as a monk under Abbess Hild at the Abbey of Whitby in Northumbria in the 7th century. The second popular poet is Bede. Bede is often thought to be the poet of a 5-line poem entitled Bede's Death Song, on account of its appearance in a letter on his death by Cuthbert. This poem exists in a Northumbrian and later version. And another popular poet is Alfred. Alfred is said to be the author of some of the metrical prefaces to the Old English translations of Gregory's Pastoral Care and Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy. Alfred is also thought to be the author of 50 metrical psalms, but whether the poems were written by him, under his direction or patronage, or as a general part in his reform efforts is unknown. The last is two types Old English poetry. Old English poetry is of two types, the heroic Germanic pre-Christian and the Christian. It has survived for the most part in four manuscripts. The first manuscript is called the Junius Manuscript, which is an illustrated poetic anthology. That's all from our material Old English literature. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.